This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Nicole, I think we're ready.
Okay.
Thanks, Chet. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
First, I want to say good morning to everyone and welcome you to our executive committee meeting here Thursday, July 2nd. It's 8:30, 1 a.m. We will begin with our roll call. I'm Patricia Page, and I am your 2021 chairperson. And I will read our certification of a quorum. And it reads, we ask that everyone identify themselves first when speaking so that we can move adequately, have adequate record of the activities of the meeting. All lines have been muted by the administrator to minimize additional noise and feedback. You may unmute your line at any time to request acknowledgement from the chair. Staff will be monitoring the chat throughout the meeting to assure we do not overlook anyone wishing to participate in the discussion. Please indicate your presence by saying aye when your name is called during a roll call. Anyone who wishes to identify themselves following the roll call of members will be invited to do so. I will now ask our clerk to certify that we have followed the approved procedures for the appropriate notice of this meeting and the means by which we are convening.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will go ahead and take attendance at this time. Let's start with Charles City County, Mr. Koda. Chesterfield County, Mr. Holland.
Hello, good morning, friends.
Good morning.
I wanted to make sure I was unchatted, unmuted.
Unmuted. We can
Sorry.
hear you, Mr. Holland.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Sure. Miss Haley. City of Richmond, Miss Newbell. Mr. Addison. Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhauer.
Aye.
Mr. Lumpkins. Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Henrico County, Miss O'Bannon.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton. New Kent County, Miss Page.
Aye.
Mr. Tiller. Powhatan County, Mr. Williams. Mr. Nordvik. Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
And Mr. Spania. That concludes the roll call, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Next, we will have our statement regarding our virtual meetings by Ms. Parsons.
Jen, I believe you
We can't.
I can't hear.
muted.
We can't hear you, sir.
I believe he's muted and he's trying to use his cell phone for the audio. And somehow it's not working.
Madam Chair, might suggest that Mr. Mueller might be able to go ahead and read this while he's working on that.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yes,
we
sir.
can hear you now, Chet. Yes.
Okay.
Saved you.
Thank you.
Statement regarding virtual meetings. Since the governor declared the state of emergency on March 12th, 2020, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, state and local governmental bodies have been providing for the continuity of government by meeting remotely by telephonic or electronic means in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, the Commonwealth's emergency and other applicable laws, guidance provided by the Attorney General and their respective legal counsel. On April 22nd, the General Assembly approved a budget amendment to authorize all public bodies, including regional bodies such as Plan RVA and the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization, likewise, to meet by electronic means without a physical quorum assembled together during a governor-declared state of emergency, as long as certain conditions are met, so as to provide for the continuity of governmental operations. This new authority is effective immediately. The bylaws of the RRTPO Policy Board define a quorum of the Executive Committee to be a simple majority of total Executive Committee membership, which is 5. The 2020 COVID-19 virus makes it impracticable and unsafe, even potentially life-threatening, for a quorum of this size to physically assemble in one location pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2A3. Further, the virus makes it impractical and unsafe for the public and the agency staff to gather in the same location to participate in this meeting. The health, safety, and welfare of our community is of paramount importance. Therefore, we have determined the appropriateness and eligibility to conduct today's meeting of the RRTPO electronically pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2 and related legislation approved by the General Assembly of Virginia, and in light of the governor's state of emergency declaration for COVID-19. The convening of the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization has been determined necessary in order to continue the necessary business of the organization. The matters included on the agenda address important and essential matters of continuing the work of government, and therefore it is appropriate to convene during this time. While we do not know the exact duration of the current practice of electronic meetings, we will continue to function in this manner until such time as it is deemed advisable to return to in-person meetings. RRTPO staff have provided notice of this meeting and the means by which we are virtually gathered to members of the public. Notice was provided on June 22nd, 2020 through posting on the Plan RVA website and distribution of email notification to members, alternates, and known interested parties, including the media. In order to comply with the provisions of Virginia law and to improve accessibility to the discussions intended for today, this meeting will be recorded. Audio-visual recordings of this meeting will be posted on the Plan RVA website within 48 hours of the meeting. Any members of the public wishing to address the RRTPO Executive Committee were invited to submit comments via email until the close of business one day prior to the meeting, in order to be reviewed and addressed during this meeting if necessary. Anyone participating as an observer during the meeting today may submit comments or questions at any time during the meeting via email at rrtpoinput@planrva.org or by using the online chat functions of the meeting platform. Those individuals who are observing by phone may be called upon to address the RRTPO Executive Committee with their questions or comments. All comments and questions submitted during the meeting will be reviewed following the meeting, and to the extent practical, responses may be provided or posted on the Plan RVA website. Does anyone have any questions regarding the process for assuring effective facilitation of this meeting or for how members of the public may participate?
I would like to comment that callers that are unidentified 1 through 6 have not muted their microphones, and I hear a little background noise. They are not identified. They're just caller 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I just want to point that out. I heard some dogs barking.
Thank you, Ms. Savannah. We ask everyone to mute your phones unless you're speaking. And Mr. Parsons, you will continue with procedures for electronic meetings?
Yes, ma'am. As you see on the screen, the procedures for electronic meetings were approved by the RRTPO, I believe, back in April of 2020, and they have not changed. They have been available as part of the meeting agendas as we have met during this pandemic, and have been available to anyone, including the public, for review and comment. For that reason, we don't have a need to read those through again in person. They are a resource for the body, and if there are any questions about them, I'd be happy to address those now.
Do we have any questions? Being hearing none, we will move on to the approval of the TPO Executive Committee meeting agenda.
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Peterson
Yes.
and second by
Mr. Hodges?
Mr. Hodges, that the Executive Committee meeting agenda has been, we have a motion on the floor. We ask the clerk if you will poll our members, please.
Yes, ma'am. The committee will now be voting on item 1, approval of today's meeting agenda. Chesterfield County, Mr. Holland.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Page.
Aye.
Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
That concludes the voting for item number 1, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Item number 2 is the approval of the June 4th, 2020 TPO Executive Committee meeting minutes. If there are no corrections, revisions.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a comment, perhaps a correction.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is Pat O'Bannon. As you recall at the last executive committee meeting, I mean, you may not recall, but I do. I had already signed up and was waiting, as we are now, for the meeting to start, when all of a sudden a technical difficulty happened, which I still haven't been able to figure out, and I was dumped from the meeting. And if you look at and by the way, I did not vote on some things because it took me about 15 minutes I actually had to turn my computer off and restart it. I don't know what happened. There may have just been a blink in the electricity, or, either my end or somewhere that I got bumped off, but it took me about 15 minutes to get back on. And on page 9 of the minutes, it shows the voting records of what happened. I was wondering, because I did attend and I am shown as present in the meeting, and it looks strange at the voting that I have no voting record, but I did not vote. Is there any way to put in there Henrico and my name and technically unavailable or technical difficulties? Because I did attempt, let me put it this way. I was going to attend the meeting and attempted to attend the meeting. And remember, we're doing this electronically. And this just looks very strange. And in the future, for future records, I don't know what people are going to think. So if there's some way, either in the voting record or in the minutes, to show that because of technical difficulties, I was not, oh, there you go, present, but was unable to cast your vote. Thank you. I see you have added that. And that's all I'm saying, is that I'm not trying to change a vote or anything. But if it happened to you, someone might look at it later and say, well, it said you were present. Why didn't you vote? That's the reason for that addition. And I appreciate it. Thank you. So
Madam,
you want me to move the minutes for approval?
if you would, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If Ms. O'Bannon could please make that in the form of a motion to amend the minutes accordingly, per the offered language, that would suffice.
So shall I move the minutes as amended with the language provided?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
I move the minutes with the language provided to amend them.
Second that, Commissioner Holland.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Bannon to move the minutes with the correction or revision, showing that she was present but unable to cast her vote. It was second by Supervisor Holland. We're ready for you, Madam Clerk, to poll the members.
Yes, thank you. The committee will now be voting on item number 2, approval of the June 4th meeting minutes as amended. Chesterfield County, Mr. Holland.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Page.
Aye.
Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
That concludes the voting for item number 2.
Thank you. Item number 3
Madam
is the
Chairman.
public. Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, Sean Davis Hanover, how are you?
Good morning.
We had a little, I can hear everything, but I wasn't sure. I think I was on the roll call. I just wanted to make sure that I was on the initial roll call. I'm sorry to have to jump back so quick, but if the secretary would just confirm that with me. I can hear and I can respond if needed, but I wasn't sure if I was on the initial roll call, if that got marked as present.
Yes, Mr. Davis, this is Ms. Mueller. I did mark you as present.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And at this time, do we have anyone that has joined the meeting that was not here for the initial roll call? Okay, we will proceed on to item 3. Item 3 is our public comment period. And we ask if anyone is joining us, if you have any comments from the public, please acknowledge yourself. Hearing none, we will close our public comment period and move on to item number 4, your chairman's report. First of all, I thank you all for your vote of confidence of having me as your chair for this year. Our next meeting schedule for August is, as of right now, August 6, 2020. And at our normal 8:30, normal 8:30 for executive committee, and then our full board at 9:30. It is with great pleasure this morning that we recognize Mr. Hodges, who is our outgoing chair that has done an outstanding job. And kudos to you, Mr. Hodges, for leading us thus far through our new meeting mode, and with all of our first difficulties of getting on and handling it with such professionalism and expertise, I must say. And so we just appreciate your service for the year of 2020. And it is our desire that we would have a presentation for you today. We will be doing that virtually. However, sir, it is it would be your choice if you would come by, or we can mail you this wonderful, which Mr. Parsons is holding up for everyone to see, this wonderful gift of our appreciation, and quite unique, as we must say, for all of your time and your effort and your dedication and commitment to the Richmond Regional TPO.
Thank you.
We thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. Can the secretary tell me what it is? It looks like a hot water bottle.
Yes, sir. This is a handmade water bottle from Blanco Glass Company.
Wow.
In Milton, West Virginia, and it's etched in. It says with the Plan RVA, the Regional Commission logo, it says John Hodges, thank you for your service.
Wow,
And
that's very impressive.
Multiple uses. You can use it as a vase. You can pour water from it. You can it can be a decanter.
Well, I'm honored and I appreciate it, and I'll take responsibility for all the glitches that occurred, and we'll move on. You'll do great, Ms. Page. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your service.
We will make sure it's cleaned and we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
we'll send an applause to you, sir, for all of your commitment. Everyone, thank you so much.
Thanks to the staff for their support too.
Absolutely. So moving on to item 4, we have our secretary's report, Mr. Parsons.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Page, if we can go back to the chair's report, 4A was the August meeting, and I think we wanted to have a discussion about whether there was a need to actually hold it or not.
Okay.
I think the agenda as we see it right now doesn't have any action items. There are updates, or a number of updates to give you. And I think that typically we would have canceled the July meeting. Like last year, we had a joint June-July meeting. This year, we're holding it, obviously. So I think it's up to the body to decide whether there is a desire to continue to hold the meeting. At this point, we expect it will be virtual unless something changes drastically in the next few weeks. So I think we're up to the staff is ready to move either way.
Okay.
And I think the
So-
discussion should be whether the executive committee makes that recommendation to the full board.
Thank you. The chair will now open the floor for discussion on whether we will have a August 2020 meeting, be it virtual or if we can meet in person. However, a meeting we open it up now for your discussion and your thoughts on this and a motion.
Madam Chairman, I had a question whether there was anything that might come out of the CVTA meeting that the RRTPO might need to address. That would be my question.
You just go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Parsons.
Yes, ma'am. Great question, Mr. Hodges. Right now, and this is going into the Secretary's report, but we are working, with the admin organizing committee of the CVTA, which many of the folks in this room are engaged with. I think that the plan right now would be the CVTA holds an organizational meeting sometime in July, later this month. At this point, the sentiment is that the TPO staff and structure basically would help to guide the way that the CVTA is organized and run. So we are talking about things like sharing staff time, like an MOU with the TPO. We are talking about when meetings will be held. The discussion right now is that there might be a preference to hold those meetings after the policy board meetings because there are many members of the policy board that may also be named to the CVTA. Those appointments are being made now. Not every jurisdiction has done that yet. So I think there may be some business to come to the policy board, but at this point, I'm not sure how critical it would be to address that the first week in August. I think we could certainly, if it's the body's pleasure, we could leave the meeting up in the air until we know more details and then make the decision down the road. Or I think there could be a number of ways to address this. I don't know if Mr. Gregory would have any advice. I mean, you could do a conditional cancellation if that's something you want to do.
Mr. Gregory, do you have any comments?
Not a whole lot to add. I think Mr. Parsons covered it, other than I would just add that he's exactly right. You could cancel the meeting subject to being subject input from staff about potential business matters that need to be addressed, or you could wait and issue a cancellation later this month ahead of the meeting if you like, or go forward with the meeting.
This is Pat O'Bannon. Technically, is it just the chairman that could call the meeting to, call for a meeting or cancel a meeting? I mean, technically, legally?
I believe under the bylaws, I believe, I haven't looked at this particular question this morning, but I believe it has to be in response to a request from a member. And then in response to that request, the chair can call a meeting, or I believe cancel a meeting. But I'll double check that.
So would it be better for us to say cancel and then do it later, or leave it on and then cancel later? I guess that's the question. Which would be easier?
Probably. Well, I mean, you could cancel it now. If there's a concern that you still may need to meet, I would suggest that you just leave it as is, and it can be canceled at a future date as the date approaches.
Madam Chair, Peterson.
Yeah.
If is there anything other than the CBTA that we would be needing to address in August?
We do not expect any action items.
Okay,
Okay.
with that, Mr. Parsons, is there any date for the organizational meeting for CBTA been talked about yet?
No, right now, in a straw poll of the member jurisdictions, there's a lot of action taking place next week, I believe, at individual board meetings to name the appointments to the CBTA. So we were waiting to try and schedule until after that. My guess is right now it'll be sometime the week of the 20th.
Okay. That's when I was going to be out of town on the 13th. I wanted to make sure of that now.
Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Holland. Given
Yes,
what
sir.
Ms. O'Bannon has asked, and my question was related to the bylaws as well, I would suggest and urge that we cancel the meeting, and then should there be a need to call the meeting, it could be called, but then it would be taken off the calendars and thus not held. Given that there are no action items, again, only meet if there's a need to meet.
I agree with
Absolutely.
Mrs. Neil Spooner from Goochland. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
So I'm prepared to make a motion, Madam Chair, to that extent, if you are so inclined to receive it.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Holland, if you would, please.
Yes, ma'am. I move that we defer the council, rather, our meeting schedule as noted August 6, 2020, until our next meeting, which is scheduled for September.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Pat.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that our August 6, 2020 meeting be canceled. Madam Clerk, will you please hold the board, please?
Mr. Parsons, would this require a roll call for the vote, or is this just a recommendation for the policy board?
Recommendation, but it would be preferred if they have a motion to make that recommendation.
I'll go ahead and
With roll call.
Sure, thank you. I'll go ahead and take the roll call then. Chesterfield County, Mr. Holland.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Page.
Aye.
Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
And that concludes the roll call.
Thank you. Moving to item 5, our secretary's report, Mr. Parsons.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I just gave a brief update on the CBTA. I think in general, staff is excited about the opportunity to be a resource for this new authority. So that's something that we're looking forward to being a helpful, I guess, interim staff for the authority and the members that are to be named in the next few weeks. I don't really have any other updates on the CBTA. I think there's going to be a lot of information coming out during this month in terms of appointments and organization and procedural things. I think in terms of we're now talking about funds disbursement and when that would happen. In any regard, the 50% to the local jurisdictions, the 35% regional, and the 15% to GRTC, and what the implications of those that disbursement is. We are looking for an update to the revenue projections. The last time that those were done were in March, so you can imagine that those revenues are going to be coming down a lot. I think the general thought right now is to expect 50% reduction, but that's throwing darts. So we're looking forward to seeing when those projections are redone, and that'll help inform a lot of the decisions that are being made at a local level. Are there any questions from the group or anyone that has more information than I do that wants to share?
I have just a question. When the framework is established, or how the who's going to be on it and that sort of thing, did they make a decision that the TPO would be part of it, or are we already we're already part of it?
You're muted.
I just muted myself. The authority itself, the legislation does not have a seat on the actual authority for the TPO. But all indications I've gotten are that many of the same folks that serve on the TPO will be named to the authority as well. The TPO does have a seat on what I think the authority is going to call their TAC, which is similar in function to our TAC. So I would be in that capacity as a member of the technical committee for the authority.
Because the desire was that our list of needs or a list of projects would be used by the CBTA. And I thought it was part of the agreements that were made that we would be where those just what gets done, not, money, but what projects get selected would come through this organization. That's my concern. And also knowing that if this appears to be where it will bring in pretty much money, and the TPO is not able, I guess, to handle the financing, and so it would mean some more people would need to be hired or something. That's part of what they're going to discuss, I assume. So
that's correct. Yes, there will definitely be a need, especially on the finance side, for more expertise and staff to do that. And I think the authority, the folks that will be named, have an understanding of that and the priority that that's going to be. In terms of the recommendations and the work that the TPO does in terms of identifying projects, that is not that was not included in the legislation. That's not something that it's implicitly assumed that the priorities that the TPO identifies would be priorities for the authority, but we don't have a direct tie-in to their decision-making process. So it's important to me that TPO members are able to serve in both capacities and have an understanding of the relationship between all of these different organizations.
Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon, for that comment. I appreciate that. My understanding about the legislation is that it's primarily geared toward the specific jurisdictions impacted by it, namely the ones that we serve currently. And certainly, it will be my hope that there will be information shared with the TPO such that everyone will be knowledgeable of the money, the amounts, where it's flowing, and what it's flowing to. So I think, because one thing we don't want to have happen, if I'm not speaking out of turn, is to have a information not shared, to have a hole where information, or silos where information is available, but we're not on the same page and not well informed about the flow of the money. I think that's a critical piece of it for me, and certainly that's one thing I would hope as we move forward. But jurisdictions certainly have the right to do as they desire with the resources that are allocated them. However, it's important regionally that we are informed and that we're working together to help make the very best decision, if I may say so, regarding those resources. Does that make sense?
Yes, Mr. Holland, it does. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, we thank you, Mr. Parsons, for your report. Now we'll have your review of selected TPO agenda topics.
Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to bring that up on the screen. I think that the main topic today, just talking to you, is the discussion about smart scale. And as you know, this round of smart scale, round 4, is a pre-application process where member jurisdictions worked cooperatively through this organization to identify 12 regionally significant projects that would be put into the pool for consideration for smart scale funding at this time. Those 12 pre-applications were screened by the VDOT staff, and we all got results back for those projects in terms of questions that remained unanswered, an indicator of how successful they might be in moving forward in the process. The task today is to act on a recommendation by the TAC to narrow that project list from 12 to 10. We can only include 10 projects from a regional basis for smart scale funding. So the task today is to have a discussion about those 12 projects and make the hard decision about which two to take off that list and move forward into the full application. The timeline is that applications are due by August 3rd. So there does need to be action today by the policy board so that staff can move forward in making sure those applications are complete. And again, we do have a recommendation from TAC that was included as a supplement to the agenda package and is reflected in the agenda that is online right now. If anybody's had a chance to review that and has any questions, we can certainly address those now. I will certainly make time to have that discussion for the full board.
Are there any comments, discussion on this? I do want to start by saying that one of the recommendations was that given early when you can't apply or was thinking of applying, was that the TPO would apply for the project. It came back later that both New Kent and TPO would apply for the I-64 widening. And I see the recommendation from the TAC is that New Kent applies through one form or the other instead of both going through the process. And it is the favor of the board that of New Kent that it be applied through the Richmond Regional TPO. Any other comments or discussions or recommendations?
Yes, so essentially this is Chet. So that information this morning from Ms. Page on the preference of the New Kent board really, I think, sets us in line to make that decision that the I-64 projects would remain in our regional list, and the two that were provisional would stay out of the top 10, so to speak. So that may influence the discussion at 9:30.
Okay.
The other item that is on the agenda was one that got left off from last month when we had the audio issues at the end of the meeting. And that is related to the establishment of a transit work group by the TAC. It's really a matter of, again, the policy board requesting that the TAC establish this work group. And the goal there is twofold. One, there hasn't really been at the TPO level a discussion very specific to transit. And I think that the work that's been happening in the region over the last few years lends itself to the need to, bring back transit-specific information and discussion of studies and other needs to the policy board to bring that to your attention. The primary reason to talk about that transit work group now is that as part of the CBTA, the legislation calls for establishment of a regional transit plan, which is new. We do have a transit component for our long range plan, but it's not a standalone regional transit plan. So in discussion with GRTC leadership, we thought it was a great idea to talk about establishing that work group now at the TPO so that we can start fleshing out what that regional transit plan actually means. And I think that the main message is we can't prioritize funds out of that 15% until that transit plan is complete. So the sooner we can get working on having those priorities identified in this regional transit plan, the sooner we can pull down some of those revenues and actually put them to use.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Any comments? Discussion?
Chair, Ms. Canova Peterson. Mr. Parsons, there's a lot of organization getting ready to go on here, but who is going to be holding the funds and securing those until we get to the point where they can be distributed to the communities?
That's a great question, and that's something that's one of those things that we're trying to work out along with all the MOUs and the staffing requirements is how that the finance mechanism works. I think the understanding right now is that on the transit side, GRTC is already setting up an account to hold those funds. They just won't be allowed to expend them until the boxes are checked. And I think the same in a similar fashion as, say, a Hanover County would have, I guess at your discretion, you would set up a separate account to hold authority funds that are designated for Hanover use. And the same thing for the 35%. I guess the authority would have a separate account to hold that 35% for regional projects.
So we're looking at actually distributing the funds, but just not allowing them to be dispersed, just used by the jurisdictions.
I am not an expert on this, but I believe that is the case, yes.
Thank you.
We will certainly be looking into that further over the next few weeks. And we have had great discussions with Bob Crum down in Hampton Roads about how the HR TAC down there was set up and how they established their checks and balances.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Being none, we will move on to the other business. We're again opening our public comment period. If anyone has joined us, the public would like to speak, is your time now. Hearing none, we will close the public comment period. If any of our TPO members have any comments to share with us at this time, we welcome them. Since there are none, we have discussed that we will not be, as of now, having a August 6th meeting, and we need a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Second, Supervisor Holler.
Thank you. Moved and properly second that we adjourn and convene again at 9:30 for our policy board meeting. Mr. Parsons, something?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just a reminder that there is a different link for the 9:30 meeting, so you should leave this meeting and go back to the email reminder that was sent to everyone and use that specific link to click in.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Do we need
All
to
right, we'll
vote?
see you at 9:30.
Do we need another vote?
No, I don't think so. Not for an adjournment.
Thank you. I thought so. I think that's parliamentary procedure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.